Greetings, everybody. Welcome to another edition of One Degree of Scandalous with the man, the K-Train over here, Kato Kalin.
Thank you very much. Tom, did you realize what I did to the studio today? I don't know if you picked it up, but I tried something different. I thought, why don't we put the camera right on us? Because people need to see how handsome you are.
Yeah, more Kato.
Yeah.
That's what people want. I'm Tom Zender. Thanks so much for joining us, everybody. This is the official podcast about scandal. From the past, from current, whatever. By the way, we got a great show today, too. If you think about just some of the biggest stories, the biggest scandals, news stories, just crazy stuff. The O.J. Simpson trial, of course. And then every big name, like court drama, real-life court drama. We've got the reporter, Jim Moret of Inside Edition, is going to be joining us in a little bit.
Speaking of that, do you have the... we went for the Johnny Depp trial. It's going to be a Alec Baldwin trial. There's the Alex Murdaugh trial, which I watched the special of Netflix, is right up to date, right to the court.
Like of the actual trial that's going on?
4-part series, and that ends with him, the days of him being in jail and starting the trial. It's amazing how fast they did this.
If people haven't followed that one, this one has got so many weird things, creepy things. This guy, I don't know, man. He gives off some very, very, very bad vibrations. And if you follow the story for a long time, I mean, he's a crooked lawyer to start with. He's just a creep. Akeem must know about him, right? They're from South Carolina.
Akeem knows everybody involved in this. He knows it.
Let's get Akeem on the show to talk about it. That would be great.
I'm going to get Akeem on. Let's do it next week, I think.
Okay, we'll talk about that. But look, a lot of great. You want to hear the biggest scandal going on right now?
Yes,
I lost my wallet. Have you ever lost your wallet? It sucks. It's not fun. And I'm not the guy that loses his wallet. I know where it's at.
Wait a minute. Is there pictures of the family? Is there credit cards?
There's a couple shots of Shonda in there. Maybe it was stolen from me. I don't know. All that stuff is in there, Kato. All that stuff. But here's the thing.
That's the worst feeling, though. That stomach of my... I'd be going like, where did I put my wallet?
I know, but I think I figured it out. I think it's in the garage because we moved. Right? And, and you know how it is when you move. That makes it much easier. We move, you put all the boxes in the garage, or a lot of the boxes, and then you sort through it. And this garage is great. It's going to be like a little man cave for Dash and Ivana. They're going to love it. And Shonda is such a hard driver and so organized when it comes to moving that 4 hours in that garage on Saturday, I lost it somewhere in there. So it's buried in a box. I'll never find it.
That or your wallet's in a separate box, just boxes for wallets.
Right? Yeah. I wish it was that easy. What's new in your life? Everything good?
Boy, just to be alive every day is just happiness for me. You know what? That's it. That's what I live for, is just being happy.
So far, so good?
Yes.
Keep that streak going.
Yeah, okay. And I got a feeling today's guest is going to bring back memories for me. It's just going to be a road down memory lane of, we mentioned Jim Moret, and boy, he's been in broadcasting about 40 years, I think.
At least 40 years. He's one of those guys that, you don't realize he's the age he is. Yeah. Right? Because you're just so used to watching him. But God, life moves so fast. I don't realize I'm the age I am. I'm sure the same with you.
No, I don't.
I also don't like to admit it. I'm living in denial.
Me too.
I refuse to admit how old I am.
Are you kidding me? I love getting carded.
All right. So what do you say we do it?
Let's go.
Let's bring in Kato's old friend, television legend.
America's friend,
Jim Moret, right after this break. All right, Kato, time to bring in our guest. And when you see and hear our guest, you're going to think there's a breaking news story going around, either in Hollywood, somewhere around the world. Let's bring him in, Jim Moret. And I dare you to tell me that you've never seen this guy before or heard his voice. It's synonymous with news, with scandal, with breaking news.
Not even the news, Tom. I want to find out how Jim looks identical from the 90s. What is he?
I don't think so.
Yes, you do. You look
it's
fantastic.
All gray,
Jim
Kate,
Moret.
I'm all gray.
You are.
It is pretty crazy.
Just for men. Come on, Jim. You look fantastic. Jim Moret, everybody. I am proud to say a friend as well. Just meeting Jim back in the 90s, Tom, was I knew immediately, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jim, but when I first met you, I knew instantly this guy's going to be a friend of mine.
You know what? I have to tell you, you were so maligned after that trial. And you and I met, and we did a real goofball segment for CNN called Bowling for News. I don't know if you remember this.
Of course I remember.
And I have to tell you, you were so gracious and so genuine and so real. And I thought, I like this guy.
Yeah.
I just liked you immediately. You were real. You were genuine. And I've always felt that way about you. And we've seen each other over the years. And it's a real treat to be with you now.
I thank you so much. And I feel the exact same way. And I actually never lost touch with you. And we had another guest on our show that was, obviously I know Jim because of the O.J. trial, the O.J. Simpson saga. But we had Jill Shively on. Anybody that knows you, loves you, and You're just that kind of person. You give out the best energy.
Oh, thank you.
And always positive.
Well, you have to have that long of a career, Jim, because
you know what I have to
TV
tell you
will
about
eat
Jill
you up.
Shively?
Mm-hmm.
I was a friend of Jill Shively's on Facebook for possibly 10 years, right? Mm-hmm. And she had asked me to review a film or something like that she and her daughter had worked on. I had no idea that was the same Jill Shively that was involved in the OJ. And then we meet, and then I'd interviewed her for a story, and I said, wait a minute, you're that Jill Shively? I had no idea. She said, well, why were you so nice to me? I said, I don't know. We were just friendly. I just,
That's crazy.
You just try to be authentic.
Her story was so good. When we had her on the show about 3 or 4 weeks ago, just she was living with the regret of doing that, selling the story. But in the long term and in the grand scheme of things, it didn't matter.
She did nothing wrong.
Exactly.
Nothing.
And she's a cool lady. And that was a good episode. If you're watching this and haven't watched that, go back and listen. But Jim, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Man, it's funny because Cato obviously became a household name everywhere. Boy, you probably got more airtime during the OJ trial on CNN than maybe anybody else on TV. I mean, wouldn't you say? It was every single day. I mean, it was huge. Your life changed as well because of it.
It did. It was, I think it was 1,000 hours on TV for that 9-month period of time for the criminal trial. It was basically from 9 till 4 every day on CNN. And it's funny because the folks in our Washington bureau were really opposed to us covering this nonstop. And it was just a few months after the trial that they were all covering a stain on a blue dress, if you recall, from Bill Clinton. So, I really believe, I know it's going to sound crazy, but I think that the OJ trial launched reality TV as we know it today. I really do, because people stopped watching soap operas. They were watching a real life soap opera. Right. And then there was this insatiable appetite. And even now, today, Alex Murdaugh, the trial in South Carolina is nonstop on CNN, on MSNBC, and it's that same kind of fervor that people have, this thirst for this real crime drama.
Well, I think you're right in saying that because at that time, one of your colleagues, Larry King, he had called me the first reality star, so I think that was going around and being reality. So he said that, and let's face it, they started the show as a burden of proof. Roger Cossack got a show. Greta Van Susteren got a show. Court TV started. MSNBC had a show with Dan Abrams. It was continuous. And then, of course, Current Affair, hard copies. It just spawned so many different things. Do you think that trial changed society? From before the trial to now, what do you think it's done to society?
Well, yes, I do think it's changed society. I think that people are hooked on court dramas, but real life court dramas. Mm-hmm. They don't have to look at made up dramas. The made for TV movie, these documentaries that are so popular now, these true crime podcasts, they all really were started with this thirst that was quenched with the OJ trial. When the second he took off in that Bronco, everybody was hooked. And the trial went on for so long. I don't think we have the attention span nowadays. I don't think you can have a 9-month trial. I really don't. I think people have a 1-week, 2-week attention span now.
Yeah. We learned that on the Depp trial too. It was got a little long.
Well, we did.
But Jim, you mentioned the Alex Murdaugh thing. I yesterday I finished watching already Netflix has an up-to-date series. I watched it, and the last line of part 4, I'm not giving anything away, was he's in jail now, and it's to date. He says to Buster, his living son, he says to him, "Is Netflix doing a show on us?" And it ends right on that, but it goes up to date. And my goodness, I'm compelled watching this thing of what my opinion is of guilt or not. But watching it, that
guy's a sick creep.
Yeah, that's
there's no other way to put it.
Cato, how did your life? How long did it take for your life to reach a sense of normalcy again?
I think it was right after, probably 3 months after the civil trial. So the first trial, I was indoors a year. I mean, I rarely would go out. I didn't do my normal thing of being this gregarious. I loved people. I became an introvert, which I hated. And I would say 3 months after the civil trial that, of course, the civil trial was in 96 or I think 96, whatever, Dan
I think so too.
Petrocelli.
Right.
And so I'd say it was right after that where things a little, it still was out there and people still were judging me. So the normalcy probably 3 months after that, but it was never as far as really normal now. It took like at least 12 years of.
But think about it. Right now, you have an entire generation that wasn't born when that trial was on.
Oh, completely. But having said that, FX did a series, and that series came out. I wrote for the New York Daily News. So it was certain things that came out that brought me back to that. I did Celebrity Big Brother.
Right.
Everybody knew me from Celebrity Big Brother. And while I was touring on this 4 years as a MC of this Wizard World, which is the largest traveling Comic-Con, the parents knew me. They had to tell their kids who I was, but the kids knew me from Celebrity Big Brother. And I said, I'd like to be known for that instead.
It's funny, and with that name, Jim, and with his name that he has.
I blame OJ for the Kardashians. So there you have it.
Hopefully they're thanking him.
Which is funny because
they're all billionaires.
Oh, yeah. Ryan Murphy, you put him in his show, American Crime Story. And when I was writing the articles for New York Daily News, I said, they weren't in these parts. This is all made up. But it was made up because, look at, they knew that Twitter followed the billion followers, the millions of people that like the Kardashians. They knew that they had them hooked, that people would watch it more. So yeah, it's people that weren't really related to the trial. Jeffrey Toobin, him getting a show. It's just all these different people that weren't really part. They just get in. They were became big players and made a lot of money.
And I was the main anchor for CNN for that trial. And what was interesting was, I was hosting an entertainment show called Showbiz Today at the time.
Yeah.
And when OJ took off on the Bronco, I was the only LA anchor, and I'm a lawyer. So they threw me on the set. And during the preliminary hearing and then during the trial, a lot of people would say, what's the entertainment guy doing? And they didn't realize that I was a lawyer. So it really kind of merged showbiz, entertainment, and legal. And it created this kind of cottage industry where you have legal pundits and folks giving their opinions as they do now every night on TV. And that's really changed a lot. You have the talking head now more than ever as a result, I think, of the O.J. Simpson trial.
Yeah, and it had sports. Everything was covered. Fame, celebrity, L.A., showbiz, news, breaking news. It was there. We'll never see another story like that. We all know that. Now, Jim has had a hell of a career, 40 years. I mean, at least 40 probably. At Inside Edition now, the lead correspondent. Back then, he was on CNN. Jim also Headline News, Fox News Channel, Court TV, MSNBC. When you said something interesting. You said that the executives at CNN weren't in favor of the around-the-clock trial coverage that you had back then. But then you look at the ratings. America loved it. Isn't it ironic? Wouldn't CNN kill for those ratings right now? Oh, my God.
I mean, I have to admit, many of the execs knew that it was a major story that we had to cover. But the folks in the political side, in the D.C. side, felt like this really wasn't news. It was tabloid. And it really, you know what? Yes, it was tabloid. I'm not going to suggest it wasn't. It had sex, drugs, rock and roll, all that stuff. But, 2 people were brutally slain. And it was a genuine whodunit. And it was the fall of this icon. And I think you had to cover it. It became a social phenomenon. And everyone was talking about it. So if you're going to be a 24-hour news network, you couldn't avoid it. And we had the opportunity, the unique opportunity of being live nationwide throughout the day. So I think it was smart to capitalize on it. But yes, the ratings were a double-edged sword. They brought in huge ratings with that trial, but then when the trial was over, it was like we needed a fix, and there was nothing that would replace it.
Yeah, and they sell those advertising rates based on that trial, and there's no way to sustain that. The fact that you were a lawyer, that gave you so many advantages sitting on that set, where you understood the language that was going on between the prosecution and the defense. That alone, I mean, that just... the value that you had on the set was magnified significantly, right? Because you could listen to that, interpret the information as a lawyer.
My goal and my responsibility, as I saw it, was, and I took it really seriously, I never gave my opinion during the trial or immediately after. As a matter of fact, maybe not even for 10 or 15 years did I give my honest opinion. I was trying to be the shepherd, if you will, and direct the legal questions to our Greta Van Susteren and Roger Cossack, our 2 analysts, and try to explain these complex terms in a way that made it easy for the audience to understand. Because at the very basic level, it was a whodunit. Did he do it? It got off the rails with Mark Furman and allegations of racism and allegations that evidence was planted and all these red herrings, frankly. But, it really brought together race and justice and celebrity and privilege in a kind of unique way.
So let me ask you, when you're doing showbiz today, and then the OJ thing happens, and you're doing showbiz today with the OJ droppings, and then there's Greta, and there's Roger Kosak, and there's other ones. Now, does CNN realize, like, well, Jim's getting a ton of fan mail, and are they saying, like, we got to get Jim on more? We got to put him on another segment.
Well, during the trial, I was on nonstop. The kind of curious thing is, after the trial, they just didn't really know what to do with me. I mean, this is before you had news opinion. They were straight news, CNN back then. Mm-hmm. They didn't have nighttime, primetime shows where it was primarily talk. It was still a news network, and the news was the star. So, I mean, I left probably about four years after that trial and moved on to Inside Edition. But yeah, it was tricky to try to figure out where to go next. And I did a nightly news show with Wolf Blitzer and Joey Chen. We did a 3-anchor newscast called Newsnight after The World Today. The World Today, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And, but there was just nothing that would replace the Simpson trial as far as really, I mean, it was the highlight of my career in terms of just being a challenge every day, because you never knew what was going to happen.
Well, let me ask you this. Was there ever a boring day? Because it could get a little monotonous with evidence experts, the DNA testimony that was going on forever. Did you twiddle your thumbs, or because you had that law background, you could break it all down and knew exactly what was happening?
The DNA evidence took a month. Okay. Yeah. It was, oh my gosh. And it was really, it was the demise of the prosecution. They lost the jury. And I'll tell you when they lost them. They had the autopsy photos, these life-size pictures of these two beautiful people that were slain. And the jury could see them, but nobody at home could see them. I was among about 15, 20 journalists who were allowed to go in and see these pictures. They were horrific. It took 7 or 8 days on the stand, and these jurors were looking at these photos. And Robert Shapiro, on cross-examination, gets up and in 45 minutes wraps it up. And so the jury's left with the feeling, wait a minute, why did we have to see these pictures for 9 days if they could wrap up the cross-exam in 45 minutes? And it was the same thing with the 1 month of DNA testimony. You bore jurors and you lose them, and then you lose the case.
And they were boring to start with. The prosecutors were boring. They didn't have that showbiz appeal and the charisma and the presence that Cochran, Shapiro, and that team did. It was just different.
Well, I mean, and in fairness, though, the case in all cases shouldn't be based on a showbiz appeal. It's not a show, although it is supposed to grab the attention of the jury and tell them a story. But I think the prosecutors outsmarted themselves, because you had this defense team that was called the Dream Team, because they were all experts in their field, and the prosecutors were trying to figure out what the response would be, and then they'd outsmart themselves. And they really made it more complex than it needed to be, I think.
Yeah, it's for sure. Where were you watching it? Were you watching it on a monitor in a studio, or were you down at the courthouse?
Yes.
Okay.
No, I was in our studio, and I was tied electronically to the court reporter so that I could read the notes live in real time as the court reporter was typing them, so that I could then throw a question to our legal analyst. One was in DC and one was in LA. And it was more effectual for me to be in the studio, because it was a more controlled setting. We could throw to commercials and things like that, throw to other breaking news, even though we rarely did.
Yeah. When I was sitting on the stand, I got to see the jurors, and obviously the people watching cannot see it, but you saw them. You were in the room, correct?
I was in the courtroom a couple of times. Most of the days I was in the studio.
Now, I said my opinion. I said they loved OJ. Did you form an opinion of the jurors?
Well, yes, but it's an unfair opinion in the sense that I think that the defense team knew, and frankly, so did the prosecution team, knew that the ideal juror would be a woman, an African-American woman in her 50s or 60s. And Marcia Clark believed, to her detriment, that the jury consultants were wrong, and she could sway the jurors. And I think that they lost the case to a large extent in jury selection. So do I think that they loved OJ? Yes, I do. I think that they liked OJ Simpson. He was a hero to millions of Americans, but certainly to the African American community. Right. And I think that if you lose a case in jury selection, it's tough to regain their trust or change their view with the evidence.
Yeah, man, that was the golden age of TV. I felt I was in television for a long time, Jim. The '90s was great, right? It's different now. Do you feel that way? What's it like at Inside Edition? You're working with another TV legend, Deborah Norville. You guys are very relevant. The other ones have. There's no more hard copy. There's some of this competition is dropped away. You guys are what you are, and if you like that kind of news, which I do, which a lot of people do, you're there for them every single day. Well, do you have any say in the stories you pick, and are you working on some bigger projects? Okay.
I don't have editorial control. I have control over my interviews. Inside Edition is interesting. If you look at our show rundown on any given day, and then you look at ABC's World News Tonight, the stories almost track identically. We do a lot more. We're not a breaking news show, although we do cover some breaking news, obviously. But we do the story behind the story. We follow up with either a victim or a widow or somebody who's impacted in some significant way by a story days after the actual story breaks. So we kind of peel away, and we have a good mix of stories. It's not the New York Times, it's more New York Post, but it's still compelling, and I think it's still personal. I'll tell you what's different now. In the 90s, we just didn't have the internet. We didn't have YouTube. We didn't have Twitter and TikTok and all of this instant opinion, much of it wrong and not factual. And it's really tough to compete with that.
Yeah, I was watching, well, I've seen you many times in Inside Edition, but a story that I just remember seeing with you, which I would never do, but you went on a hot air balloon ride. Did you ever fear that you were going to be shot down by an F-18?
No. Well, it's funny. Well, I was in a hot air balloon because we were covering a story of a hot air balloon that came in for a hard landing. And oddly enough,
do you have to pay extra for that?
We did too. I mean, it was just, I'm thinking, I'm going to get killed.
Yes.
I'm the schmo that they say, Jim, we have a great idea. Here's what we have to do. And I go, I don't think this is a good idea at all. And they go, no, it's going to be fantastic.
I hope you get stunt pay.
Jim, did you ever think that maybe they were using you as the next day's lead? Beloved correspondent goes down in a hayfield in the Bay Area.
I'm afraid of heights.
There was a suspect. I'm trying to recall what city it was, and I apologize for not being able to recall. But there was a suspect who was put in a police van, and he was basically hogtied.
In Baltimore, Gray.
It was in Baltimore. Yes.
His last name was Gray, I think.
And this poor guy died as a result of his injuries. So at Inside Edition, they had the idea, let's put Jim in a van, hog time, and see what it's like. Now, it was a controlled situation, and it wasn't in any way to minimize what happened, but rather to illustrate what happened. And I have to tell you, we only went 10, 15 miles an hour in a parking lot. And I was thrown around so harshly that, because often you think, oh, how could such and such happen? Well, we try to put things to the test to see what's really going on, and it's eye-opening, and I think that's what resonates with viewers, to be honest with you.
I remember that one. It was, and you were against the law. They didn't put seatbelts on, and you were not.
That's right.
And then that was against police regulations, and you're rolling around in a van, and
I was really
and you got injuries. Yeah,
sure.
I did.
You could get a separated
certainly
shoulder,
nothing severe, but it's humbling because you when you do things like that and you put people in situations like they put me, it is eye-opening, and it can be valuable, I think, for the viewer.
You were Super Dave before Super Dave.
Well, yes, but Super Dave did it for comic purposes, and I did it hopefully to illuminate. I mean, I hope. You know what? I really do. I have to tell you, I don't take myself seriously at all, but I really try to take what I do seriously because when you interview people, it's easy to talk to somebody and then you go off and you're on another story, but this is their life. And when you talk to somebody who suffered a loss, and I've covered so many mass shootings, and it just breaks my heart, and it also, I get PTSD from it because you see different faces and different names, but the same expression over and over. The sense of loss and shock and terror and fear and sleeplessness. And you have to realize and respect the fact that this is their life. And you can't, I can't overemphasize that enough.
No, and that's really important. And that's why you've had a long career. Credo, here's what we're going to do really quick.
Credo,
we're going to take a quick break here, Jim. We're going to be back in a minute because we're going to talk about all these other great stories he's covered. Night Stalker, Scott Peterson's double murder trial, Phil Spector, Michael Jackson, all this coming up. We're going to take a minute break. Back with Jim Moret right after this.
Well, Jim, and I'll tell you, you do enlighten people. You do. I think it's a gift. And speaking of enlightening people, you're going to enlighten us also right now because you got the Beatles. I think it's all Beatles. And I know you get the American flag, which looks like a guitar.
It's hard. Let's see what is that? Yellow Sub and Help.
Well,
my house is a shrine to the Beatles.
Well, Beatles are my kind of band too. And I'll tell you what, during the trial, I connected to a lot of the John Lennon songs. And I think when I did those Entertainment Weekly magazines, I mentioned my favorite movies and songs. And Julian Lennon, you remember, that's John's son? I became a friend of Julian Lennon's, and we used to go to the Sunset Marquee, and I'd see him at the whiskey bar. I made sure I had a seat next to him, and we just would talk for hours and hours, even after closing. We had a friendship that lasted at least 1 or 2 years. Then he moved to France, and I consider him a friend still. Haven't talked to him, but I'm sure I'd continue from that moment 26 years ago, or however long. And I bet you we pick it up like you and I did. It's just like
absolutely. Julian is like his dad. Frankly, is a really talented singer-songwriter who sounds a lot like his dad, which is probably not a great thing.
Velat, yeah.
But and you were, I think, off air. We were talking about Velat, which was his album, his big album in the mid '80s. You thought it was in the '90s. I said no, I think it was the '80s, and it was. But Julian is a very talented photographer, and interestingly enough, my son is an artist, and Julian is represented by a woman who my son works for, who also represents him. So it's a really small world. Julian actually has an art show at Bergamot Station, which is here in in Santa Monica, that's going on right now.
Is he in town?
He was in town for the opening, which I think was Saturday, a couple of days ago. But he's got a show. I think it runs through April, so I wouldn't be surprised if he's in town.
Kato, get him and Paul McCartney on the show. Could you do that for next week? Can I just announce it?
Well, actually, Paul and Ringo have just recorded with the Rolling Stones because the Rolling Stones lost their bassist and their drummer. And it's
of old age
and died. Charlie Watt and Ron Wood are passed
the
away.
Ultimate old age.
So now the Stones have put them on their new album. I don't think obviously not going to tour. I don't think tour with them. But I thought, what a brilliant move. Right? That they're
amazing.
I saw the Rolling Stones in '95, and that was kind of packaged as this might be the last one. This might be it. Yeah. It's when Mick had that long stage that he was running on. I saw him at Soldier Field. How many times have you seen the Beatles? If you have that type of memorabilia collection behind you, Jim.
You're never going to believe this. My dad wanted to take me to the Hollywood Bowl when I was thinking 8, and I said no. I was an idiot. But no, I'm a mass. I have the original Avedon collection of photographs from the '60s. I Beatles stuff all over the house. Hold on, wait a second. Hold on, wait a minute. Look at it. There's another. There's one right there. A photo.
That's cool.
Yeah, I've got crazy stuff all over.
What is it about them? Do you think that resonates with you?
Here's the Beatles. The White Album,
right there. Under,
yeah.
What's the guitar? But that's a guitar behind you. That's not
yes,
Beatle
this
related.
Is called a McSwain. It's a McSwain guitar. That's actually this comes off of this, and it's a metal front guitar, all handmade, and it's a metal flag as well. So when you take the guitar off, you still have the flag. It's really cool.
Can I have to tell a story because I for some reason a lot of people that gravitate towards me can sometimes be sort of insane and crazy. I have the best stories with Phil Spector, and I was so glad I wasn't called in for that trial. He recorded Celine Dion's album, Christmas album, and I'll never forget it.
Is that right? That was a great album.
He would never let me. Every A-list person, I won't name drop, was at the session watching him create, and he said, "Kato Kaelin sits next to me for my energy. I'm not making this story up." I sat there for 16 hours. At one time I went to pee, and then a band, this is a long time ago, a band was cutting an album, their first one or second one, called Green Day. So I met them. I'm going all in this Hollywood studios. I'm not making this up. It was the most unbelievable stories. And then Tom Cruise bought the rights to Phil Spector. And I'm thinking, I was invited to a party to Ringo Starr's, and Jeff Lynne was there, and Phil Spector would not go into the house until the host, like a vampire, invited him in. And I got I'm just glad it was
you were there for the recording of Celine Dion's Christmas album?
And I was there with Renee, the husband at the time. He passed away. But that's another story. If I ever write a book, this has got to be part of it. And then, getting back into the guitar stuff, I was introduced a band called the Smashing Pumpkins with a band called Pantera in Chicago. We shot videos for the album called Pantera. Pantera fell in love with me. I know Pantera, but it's not them. I was there for the Pumpkins. Later on, I get the actual guitar from Dimebag Darrell, guitar that Washburn made with my name. He later gets killed on stage, murdered, with a guy shooting him in the head 3 times at a show because he had another band. It's amazing, but I have that guitar.
Cato is basically the Zelig of rock and roll.
I said to myself, all these weird things happen. I should just be Cato CSI where there's a cardboard cutout of me in every crime.
Oh my gosh, that is crazy.
I have the guitar. I have a house guest key still.
Yeah,
and
he's got the key.
I can still get the house. And
my God.
I play a little guitar, but I don't want to touch that guitar.
Wow, that's crazy. And then you covered the Phil Spector murder trial, Jim.
Yeah,
I did.
That's why I brought it up.
Yeah.
I did cover that murder trial. And he would come in a different wig every day.
Wow. That one wig
he was a strange guy, a very strange guy. And I actually went to his house when he was in jail and interviewed his then wife. And his house was an odd shrine to all of the things that he'd done. He had a massive and long career in music. He created something called the Wall of Sound. That's what he was known for. And he recorded George Harrison and John Lennon and the Beatles and Let It Be album. And,
he's the godfather of Sean.
Yeah.
He has a. I was at his house. He has a shrine to his son. He's got a candle that's always lit. It's bizarre. And then he had he cannot stand.
I think he had his piano. He had the white piano that John Lennon played Imagine on.
Yeah, and he cannot stand Jeff Lynne because Jeff Lynne produced the albums for George on the Traveling Wilburys. So I was at this event when there's fights were ready to happen. And it's just a part of my life I'll never forget because I was so connected to music. And I'm watching all these superstars at Ringo's house. And I'm going, oh my God! This is like when I'm thinking back in the day, like, maybe I'll meet the Beatles one day or something. And sure enough,
and who knew?
Who knew? Right? And I was there. We're the guy who started the Wall of Sound.
I was always thrilled, frankly, to do entertainment news because I'm a closet rock and roller. I played guitar for the last 50 years. And I always, people of my generation, we all wanted to be rock stars. Mm-hmm. And I started on electric guitar before I took up acoustic. And I loved interviewing all of my heroes, like, Eric Clapton and Santana and B.B. King and Buddy Guy and Robin Ford and Larry Carlton, all these cool guys that really shaped our lives with music.
Yeah. Jim, when I hear your voice, I think of entertainment. I think of showbiz today. That show, it resonates with me more than even the breaking news or the hard news from CNN and Headline and all that. Do you consider yourself, if you had to write something on your gravestone eventually in 50 or 60 years, are you a news guy? Are you an entertainer guy? Are you just a television host, an anchor, a reporter?
I consider myself an infotainer.
I like that.
Yeah.
Because to me, entertainment news, what I really love is interviewing people. I just like talking to people.
Right.
And I think that the secret, I hope, is I never have notes. I never read questions. I always listen to somebody and I try to elicit a response based upon something they said to me that maybe would resonate with me and just have a conversation like we're doing now. Mm-hmm. I mean, I find them so much more interesting to just have a conversation with someone. But I'm not a news junkie per se. I take what I do seriously in terms of feeling a responsibility, but I do love entertainment.
Yeah. Let's do a little rapid fire on some of these other cases. I think there's a great book, another great book inside you if you just talked about your career, because true crime is so big. That's your life. Yeah. That's your career. I mean, Night Stalker. How involved were you in that one? Because we had the photographer that, got the video of him being apprehended. I want to go deep on the Night Stalker case sometime on this show, because that one is just unbelievable. Just the fear and the panic he caused in Los Angeles back in 1985. But what were you were young in your career in 85.
At that time, I was at KABC Channel 7. And it was very early in my career. I started at KABC in 1984. I started there as a lawyer, giving legal advice, and then went into hard news reporting. And I remember on more than one occasion sitting next to Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker, in court. And I have to tell you, of all of the people that I've covered, he was one of the creepiest. There was no question about it. There was something ominous about that guy that really bothered me.
He was straight from hell. He looked like Satan's descendant or something. That guy was a creep show.
You sat next to him, though? You were actually right next to him?
Close to him. It just...
there had to be an energy, right?
Yeah, I could. Yeah, the whole... I saw the Netflix special on him, too.
How about the fact that he had women in love with him? Yeah. That's not abnormal. It's happening to that Idaho murder suspect right now. He's got fans all over the world.
There was another trial called the Billionaire Boys Club trial, and then that was a case where they actually didn't even have a murder victim. The person who had died was never found, and so they tried Joe Hunt, who was the leader of this group who called themselves the Billionaire Boys Club. They tried him for murder even though they didn't have a body, and he was convicted. And I covered that for KCBS it was in 87, 88. And that guy was so detached from reality. I remember on St. Patrick's Day, he had the presence of mind to wear green. I didn't wear green because I was thinking about the trial. He was thinking about his image. And you have these people who are sociopaths or psychopaths who just are different and think differently, and they're warped. Yeah. And he was definitely one of them.
Yeah. What about, did I read somewhere that you predicted that Michael Jackson would eventually OD? Is there any truth to that story?
No. I don't know that I predicted he would OD. I was covering that trial for the 4 months when he was up in Santa Maria. And interestingly enough, I had a seat in the courtroom every day for Inside Edition, and I was also the only lawyer for broadcast who had a seat in the courtroom every day. So I was giving legal analysis for all of the networks. And I was there on this infamous pajama day when he showed up late and he was in his pajamas. I really thought he was going to die during that trial. So in a way, I wasn't surprised that he died, although the way in which he died was so weird. But I didn't go on the air and say, I predict he's going to OD, but I remember thinking, and I probably expressed this, that I don't know if he's going to live very long because something was definitely wrong with him.
Right. Yeah, you could see that.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
You should have a podcast, Jim. You should. The way that you like to just have a normal conversation is just with your background and your knowledge and your ability to get guests. Have you ever thought about it?
I didn't even realize I've covered so much until I talked to you guys. I was thinking, I haven't done anything. And now I'm thinking, maybe, you know what it is? Cato will understand. When you hit a certain age, just by having been around, you seem to have done things, even if you don't feel like you've done things.
Yeah. I like
longevity, right?
But the thing is, talking to Jim, I'm going back. I never would have thought about the Pantera. It's because I'm talking, I'm relaxed, I'm going, man, I've done a lot of stuff. I'm going,
You've done a lot. You've done a lot.
So much that's, you know what? Going really quick. Last thing on Phil Spector. When you were at that trial, did you guys in the pool of reporters and everything, did you joke around like, what wig is he going to wear today?
Well, we joked around with. He just seemed so unusual. He was weird, and that case was horrible too. He went home basically with a woman that he met at the House of Blues, and within just a couple of hours, she was dead by a gunshot wound to her head. And he's saying she killed herself when there was no reason to believe that she had, because she was beautiful and she was 40, 41, and he was the defense team tried to make it seem like she was a washed up person, and she wasn't.
It was
she
the
just
worst
wasn't.
indicator. Yeah, Lana Clarkson was her name, and
and a lovely woman, and I talked to people who were friends of hers, and they were heartsick over this, and we did talk about how he was going to appear that day, because he had this one kind of Bride of Frankenstein wig.
No, the Harpo Marx. The Harpo Marx one.
That one
was the
Then he had a straight kind of a page boy. Then they were just and he had these glasses, and he wouldn't really look at you as much as through you.
Yeah. Wow.
And he was all about persona, and he was the quintessential record producer, right?
Maybe he thought he could cast a spell on the jury or the judge or something.
Maybe.
You know what's weird though? Could you imagine America would have lost their collective mind if Kato Kaelin shows up as a character witness for Spectre? They would. What would the headlines have read? I mean, that would have been crazy.
And the funny thing about Kato too, frankly, during the OJ trial, on Kato, you had to have women just sending you love letters, right?
Yeah. No, I had cases of letters.
Warehouses, Jim. Warehouses.
Should I tell you what I did? I was single at the time. I didn't care about that. I got tons of fan mail. I answered so much out of my own pocket, which doesn't sound like a lot, but trust me, I answered probably 90% of just saying thank you, because I was a people person, and I started thinking, this is insane. And I thought, they took their time to write, and and obviously it's people sent underwear, the whole.
Kato, let's face it. Look, I'm still married to the same beautiful woman. We've been married 40 years. She said you were adorable. Every woman thought you were adorable. They all thought, I can change him. I can fix him. I can cuddle him. I can take care of him. I can nurture him. He's so sweet. He's so innocent. He's so adorable, blah, blah, blah. And I'm going, hey, I'm here. What's the problem?
No, but wait, she never sent me anything, did she?
No, she didn't.
Did she get the return address?
Kato was, you were just, talk about a reality show. You were the adorable guy, house guest. And people loved you. I mean, and I'm sure you got hate mail, but you got a lot of.
They wanted to hate him, Jim, but they couldn't. Once you meet Kato,
they couldn't hate him. There was nothing to hate.
By the way, Kato, I did not know you owned a laundromat back then. Is that why they set the underwear? I had no idea. I thought you owned a casting business. My bad.
That whole kind of.
I'm kidding. I know.
I was a rock star without the talent. So.
That's okay. Hey, it worked.
I know.
Yeah, no doubt. Let me ask you a random question, Jim. People think that, the inside editions, the hard copies back in the day, we had Jill on the show a few weeks ago. Do you guys pay for stories? Is that a fallacy? Is that not true, or do you have to?
No, we don't actually pay for stories. All shows, well, not all, but many shows, news networks, news organizations, you may pay for rights to use a photograph or licensing fee for photograph. But we do not pay for stories, and frankly, if we license a photo, it doesn't matter. I never tell anybody what I want them to say, because it doesn't matter what I want them to say. I just want to know what they have to say. So no, I think if you pay for a story, there's the implication that you're shaping what they're going to say, and I think that's a dangerous thing to do. I think if somebody owns video or photographs, and like you're making a documentary, it's normal to license those photographs. You don't own them. You only have use of them for a limited period of time. But no, we don't pay for stories.
Yeah, because you're in big trouble then, because then the expectations are so high. Everybody thinks you could roll out a check for $20,000 for them to give you an anonymous story.
Tom and I are wiping our brow now, going, we don't have to pay Jim for this. Thank God.
No, you don't have to pay. You don't have to pay me anything.
Hey, Jim.
Kato, I would do this for you. I'm doing this for you because I like you, but I would do it anyway. But I like you. I was thrilled that you asked for me.
Oh yeah.
We got to find the video of you guys bowling for news. Come on, where is it?
I've got to find. It was so much fun.
I think it's VHS on mine somewhere. I have.
We'll get that dub.
It's a draw because Kato won one game and I won another game, and I thought it's better to leave as friends.
Rematch at Kyle and Christine.
I believe we did it in Santa Monica, right? The bowling alley.
Yeah, we did.
Yes,
on 4th Street and Pico.
That's it. I remember.
Phil Spector was your ball boy.
I remember that. And the concept was, we called it Bowling for News because we had this wacky idea that if you put somebody, like it's a fish out of water situation, if you're doing something that is a non-news, non-interview setting, and you roll cameras, you're going to have a natural conversation and your guard will be down. And we actually had a great time.
Yeah.
We had fun, and we also had an interesting conversation.
Yep.
You know, that's what CNN and MSNBC and Fox News need now. I mean, a little
honestly,
bowling for news.
I think that's it was a great concept because more people should do that.
Because unfortunately, it was just we did it as a pilot, and the folks at CNN thought, this is the craziest thing we've ever seen. I don't think this is going to work, but it would have worked.
Ted Turner would have loved it.
Ted Turner.
He would have. The Maverick.
Jim made it work.
Yep. Hey, Jim, that's about it, man. We got to run. We know you got to get going on your weekend, too. But thanks so much, man. This was fun. It was great.
Honest to God, so good to see you. It was a treat. Honestly, from my heart, thank you. I love you, Jim Moret. You are fantastic. What a great person you are.
And you can bring your guitar next time and jam for us. We'll get Connolly in here. Stock Tip Dave will be in here. Let's go.
You know what?
Concert.
You would love it here at these studios. Trust me. This is Madonna's old office.
This is the old Maverick Records.
This is Maverick. So we're at. And it's
Come on down.
They shot Vogue right down the hall. That's why I wanted to kind of tempt you to come down because you would love meeting the whole gang here, and they love you.
If it wasn't soon, I would have been there.
All right.
But I knew that if I didn't make it home and lock down, I was in big trouble for the weekend.
My best to you and your family, and tell your wife I'm glad you thought I was adorable. I still am.
I know. I'll tell her.
Even better. Jim Moret, Inside Edition. Thank you so much.
Jim Moret. I'll see you, Jim. Bye. Love you.
All right. That was great, Cato. That was awesome.
The best. It brought back so many great memories for me. Just many great memories.
Okay, so you can talk more about Spectre down the road, okay?
Yeah,
Save some of those other good stories. They're awesome. We got to get out of here.
Yep.
Have a good weekend. Thanks.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, everybody, for watching. Make sure you download and subscribe to this show. Watch Inside Edition, too, while you're at it, of course. But we want you to download and subscribe on YouTube. Let's get these numbers. We're on the fast track to 10,000, so let's go.
Yep,
Tell a friend on YouTube. Let's go. And everywhere you get your audio podcasts as well. And follow us on social media because we have a lot of fun during the week. For Cato Kalin, the man, the K-Train, I'm Tom Zenner. Thanks for watching.